Good morning, everybody. Nice to see a full room and nice to see a warm Sydney. My name's Ciaran Davis, CEO, Managing Director of ARN Media and Angela Ewers, as DB has said. It wouldn't be a presentation like this without a good video. So I think probably we should start with a good video to show you who we are, what we're about, because that leads into a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about this morning.
More listeners than ever before.
That just got me excited. My ears pricked up like a little meat.
I just assumed that you guys would be dressing up.
You talk to me.
Sorry, Your Highness. Or is the correct term Lord?
Who says you can't mention an unmentionable once it's been there? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You ask for a lot and you get even more, because I want the campaigns to work.
Up to the rest of Sydney to find the person on the show who's been taken.
iHeart Live returns, everyone, tonight with Crooked Colours.
Thank you, Afterpay.
Trapped in an Indiana Jones themed escape room.
Live, powered by Specsavers.
I love expressing my love for my daughter. But It's nice to get emotional about how much you love.
I just want to say thank you. Ciaran reached out.
Oh my word! Wow, look at that!
Burstable bubbles are the very best things in life. The only things any of us ever dreamed.
The scene is set for what is going to be a memory-making day in so many ways.
All right, let's see your best dance moves. You guys are amazing!
I promise you, you are the winner.
Oh my freaking gosh.
Aussie.
Welcome to the Celebrity Pram 400.
Going to
My hands are in the air and I get swept up in it.
That's how we keep things real at ARN.
That last voice really has a voice for radio, I think. When most people think of radio, I still think in our minds we think of that old transistor set from the 1940s. And I think it's very important that in explaining the journey we've been on from a people and culture perspective, that actually we can give you the context for where our business has come from as well. We're a radio network that when I joined in 2010, we had 8 stations. We were just in Metro. We had many other assets that we had to move on and sell in things like publishing and areas like that. But today, we're all proud to say at ARN that we are one of the leading audio businesses in Australia with actually an incredibly exciting growth future in front of it. There's not many media organizations around the world that can say that, but radio companies anywhere in the world actually are on the edge of something that's really new, really different, and bringing the great stuff that we did from a radio perspective and a content perspective into a new digital broadcasting environment. We've got about 1,300 people across the country. We have 54 radio stations. We're in 36 markets, and we've got a wealth of new products coming through. And the sphere you see on the right-hand side of this chart is what we call our audio sphere. So if I think of the radio transistor where we are, and it's really important because every day we have about 15 hours of live broadcast across those 54 stations where people walk into a room that has no windows, has got a microphone, and they have to produce live and engaging content. We talk to about 8 million people every week. And that's just from a radio perspective. So we're a very dynamic, fast-paced, creative environment, which if people don't like the content that goes out, they switch to other radio stations. So we have to remain very relevant. And increasingly, not just radio stations, but other forms of media. Streaming has become a very big part of our business. People are listening to radio now. About 38–40% of people are listening to radio on a digital platform, be that on a device, a mobile phone, on our iHeartRadio app, which is a leading-edge app that we partner globally with. But increasingly, that is where the world is going to go to, and that's opening up a wealth of opportunities for us. Our digital capabilities are expanding. We're growing out how we engage from a social perspective on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchat. It used to be that you'd have a piece of audio, a piece of radio that would go out at 8:20, and that's it. It's now repurposed. It's repurposed in different environments. It's repurposed in different digital formats, and it gets airplay again and again and again and again. And that changes how we think as a business. That changes how we need to work as a business. It changes the type of people we need to continue to attract into our business. Dynamic audio is actually being able to produce content and make it relevant to somebody on an individual basis. Radio, as you know, is a one-to-many broadcast medium. But today, increasingly, it's one-to-one. So we can tailor content based on what you're listening to, when you last listened to a certain song, when you switch from that song, what type of content you like, what your demographics are. Those are new skills and capability that we're learning all the time as a business. Innovation, dare I say the word AI, is changing totally what our business is going to be. Not just today, tomorrow, in the next 6 months, 12 months, who knows? But it is an incredibly, I would call it frightening in some respects, but also exciting place to be when you see what AI can do for a media organization such as ourselves. Audio branding is very important. We all know the Winston with a Y ads. We all know the Harvey Norman ads. But that element of consistent audio branding is really, really important. And companies come to us for our skills in terms of creating campaigns, strategies, audio positionings for them to help their audio campaigns work. We work with over about 4,500 customers every day who rely on us to make sure that their investment in our business, in our content, in our people actually works for them from an ROI perspective. So we've got to be very, very good at what we do. And as you saw from the video, regularly we run many events. So our on-street activations, we've got promotions teams, we do lots of ticket giveaways and run big activations at things like the Australian Open or the Melbourne Cup that's coming up in the next few weeks. So as a business, we're not radio. We're actually a multimedia, dynamic, digitally increasingly focused business. And when I think about the journey that we've been on here, a couple of things I want to say. I think if you go back to June 2020, just before this brilliant person joined our organization, we were a very, very successful radio business. And we'd gone through about 10 years of good growth, moving from what we thought was a number 3 network in the country up to the leading network in the country. So we were doing things really well. We had a well-established way of doing things. It worked. We have to create content every minute of every day. We have to have people who are engaged, who are driven to do that. And people know what they had to do, and they were on the road, and it worked very well. And at the time, you may remember, we were navigating COVID, I thought, pretty well. We had good technology in place. We were allowed to broadcast from home. We had everything set up pretty good. And what we did was, as a leadership team, we had daily calls to see how it was going. And as those daily calls were going every day, in my foolishness, I thought the length of the call would reduce because we'd be on top of things more and the list of issues would get less. But actually what I found was the list of issues were getting more and more and more and more. And I was trying to figure out why that was. And it was because all of the issues that were at every level in the organization were being pushed up to the leadership team. And it was at that stage for the first time I thought, wow, I'm not sure we're going to be able to keep growing at the level that we are if that's the type of operation that we're running at the moment, because we need to empower. We need people making decisions and working through those on themselves. We had a very friendly culture. It was a really good place to work. It was a nice place to work. People liked coming in. People still like coming in, I hope. But we didn't challenge each other. It wasn't a challenging environment. Functionally driven, very similar to what we saw from the Ingham's friends. People were in their path. They were in content, they were in commercial, they were in finance, they were in HR. They did their thing, but trying to get people to talk across functions was practically impossible. And again, as COVID developed, that became really, really obvious. And we had a really ambitious mentality. We wanted people to grow. We had a great culture from that perspective in terms of a desire. People who work normally in radio and media are very self-driven, they're ambitious, they want to grow. And that was a very healthy thing. Now, when you take the top two lines there and match the situation we were in June 2020, whereby we had one or two really big acquisitions that we were looking at, which was fundamentally going to change this business and how we would operate and how we would be. We had new consumer listening habits coming through. Podcasting was getting very big. Today we have about 40 million podcasts a month on our iHeartRadio app. Digital was getting big. We saw that people actually were not just listening to radio in the car, but actually the content was so important to them and the connection that they had, that when COVID was on and they were working from home, listening to radio grew because people wanted that connection with breakfast shows or drive shows or weekend shows, whatever it was. So listening was growing. We had new revenue models, particularly in the dynamic digital space. We were actually in a position where we could take the fight to Spotify or to YouTube Music or to those global tech platforms. And for Australian media organizations to be able to do that, we needed to totally change how we thought, how we worked, and how we operated. And we had emerging business models. It used to be that you'd hire a breakfast show, they'd build an audience, you'd go and sell it, and you'd manage the costs and you'd make your profit. Actually, things are moving so fast now that we're coming up with concepts for a podcast or a new radio station or a new radio show or a new form of music that actually we will move and generate in about 2 hours. And we needed people to be empowered to be able to take advantage of that. The old planning cycle didn't work anymore. So we had a radio model that wasn't fit for purpose. What do I mean by that? Again, very similar. There was a lack of clarity and alignment to overall strategy. Content people knew what they had to do. Salespeople knew what they had to do. But we didn't have an overarching strategic framework from which the business knew the journey we were on to help understand decisions that we were making. We had a very solid HR team. But my fault, I probably use them as much more from an administrative perspective as opposed to a mission business critical partner. And we had underinvested in people and leadership capability, 100%. So, June 2020, we went for a coffee. We talked about new, more dynamic ways of working. We wanted to build better capability in integration, in planning, in strategic development, in SOAPs and POPs. And ultimately, we wanted to build a more constructive path to a constructive culture, which is something that was totally new to me. So human synergistics, I have to say, I'm ashamed to say it for the people in this room, I knew nothing about in June 2020.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, so I started working in the business in November 2020 and started out by chatting with a few of the leaders, understanding what was going on, trying to get a sense of where we were at. And one of the things that I said to Ciaran was, if we can start by understanding our culture in a bit more detail, that will help us then prioritise what we do and what we don't do. And so we agreed that we were going to start with a culture survey, and having worked with the human synergistics tools for some time previously and being accredited in OCI and the OEI as well, we decided that that was a good path to take and see where we went. So we launched into that in February 2020, and I'm going to share with you now what those results were. So this was our starting point. So one of the things we did was we asked the top 2 layers of the organisation to do an ideal culture survey. We wanted to do that so that they could understand, if they, well, what we asked them to do, was to think about what was the ideal culture that they thought we should have to be able to be successful in our business. And so we wanted to set that so that we could show them, given the opportunity, this is the culture you would choose to work for. So the first image that you see is that circumflex, so highly constructive. We then surveyed the entire business, and we did an OCI and an OEI. The OEI gave us causal factors, so what are the things that cause the culture to be the way they are? And this chart shows you the data that we got out of doing that survey. What we found was that people were respected, they really liked their leaders, they worked well with their leaders were good at leading tasks, and we got things done, as Ciaran said, but we weren't clear It validated that lack of clarity around vision and purpose. It validated that some of the roles and the way that the roles in the business was working wasn't quite working anymore. Reward and recognition, we weren't really leveraging those things as well as we could have been. And communication was solid, but it was top down, so it wasn't a two-way communication. So the culture that was creating is the one that you see here. So highly defensive, low on the constructive styles, but the really positive thing for me out of this was we got 87% of our organisation chose to be a part of the survey. So lots of energy, and as Ciaran said, lots of passion for what I do, passion for the business, passion for getting involved and having a say, but really, defensive behaviours, so silos, people just kind of being quite compliant, following the rules, not pushing the envelope in terms of, maybe we should be doing things differently, pushing decisions upward. All roads led to the ELT. And then there was a bit of a competitive piece as well, so people wanting to be seen and noticed and be the best at things. And then in terms of outcomes, so what was that culture then creating in terms of outcomes for our people at individual, team and organisational level? So, again, we had some strengths in role clarity. People knew their job, they knew what they needed to do. But in terms of things like advocacy for the business, so whilst people were passionate about their role or what they did, they didn't have an overall passion for ARN as a business, and they didn't really understand how they could contribute to that. Motivation and satisfaction weren't as high as they could be. People were quite insecure in their roles, and collaboration and teamwork wasn't strong either, as Ciaran talked about. So the data gave us a really good starting point, and it helped us direct our energy in certain ways, and it also meant that when we remeasured, we could see progress. So we could measure progress, set a plan, measure progress, and then work out what worked and what hadn't worked. So what we did next, we worked on leadership. So we started with the ELT. Each of the ELT did their LSI. I started with Ciaran, actually, to make sure that he could get his head around it and he wasn't going to ask me what the hell I was thinking. So that was interesting. We really talked to the ELT about, well, why would we work on culture and what does that look like? And we got really aligned as a team that it was really important. We then did some work as an ELT on our clarity, so our why, why do we do what we do, what's important to this business. We talked about our strategy and we got a lot clearer about the strategic priorities and how do we map that out. And then we talked about aspirational culture and where do we want to take our culture from here. And the model that you see up there is what I use to talk to the ELT and the next few layers of the business, so that they could see that actually, if your core purpose is your why, your strategy is your what, and your culture is your how. And those two things add together to create your business performance. And then we communicated. So Ciaran and I hit the road. We went out and we sat down with everybody and we talked to them about the survey results. We talked to them about the business plan. And it was the first time, so people tell me, it was the first time that they'd seen Ciaran go out and talk about things other than ratings and revenue, which was what the focus had been up until that time. So lots of positive energy around that. We started, really focusing on two key areas. Leaders, so how do we build the capability and the confidence in our leaders to do what we needed them to do? So we developed a leadership program and we started again at the top and worked our way through, still working our way through the organisation, rolling that out. Leveraged LSI 1 and 2 to help people understand how they think and how that lines up to our aspirational culture, and that's been quite powerful. We focused in on helping them think about how they are a leader across the organisation and leading each other and leading not just their team members, but working with other leaders. And we pushed out disseminated leadership responsibility. So we created local leadership groups so that we could say, you guys, these are the things that you can just go get done. Like, don't come to us and ask us for recycling bins in the Melbourne office. You guys figure that out. That's something you guys can do locally. So really demonstrating that they could take that and run with it and giving them that accountability. And then for everybody else, we really focused in on role modelling the culture we wanted to see. So behaviours, the language we used, how we communicated. We asked for feedback regularly and we made a point of always responding to that feedback, so showing that two-way. So ask us what you want to know about and we'll get on with it, and this is what we'll agree with, and sometimes this is what we're not going to do. So we, 18 months later, before I get into that, we also took the circumplex and our aspirational culture and we turned it into a really simple behavioural model. We wanted to give it really, really simple and actionable, so we called it our culture in action, and we translated the self-actualisation and achievement styles and we made them into 4 simple behaviours. So we took this out and we rolled this out to the business and we said, this is what that means. So don't worry about the circumplex, don't get too worried about the data, but when you come to work every day, this is how we want you to behave, this is how we want you to work together. So 18 months later, we did our next survey and we were really, really thrilled because what we'd worked on had improved. And in between all of that as well, we'd actually bought another business. So the acquisition that Ciaran talked about, one of them came off, and so we were integrating the business and we were working on culture at the same time, but we still managed to make some really good improvements. So in November 22, we saw causal factors. We saw, that work on mission and leadership had really worked. Two-way communication and empowerment had also improved. Again, we got a really good response rate, so 82% of people chose to participate in the survey. And we saw all of our styles go in the right direction. So all of the constructives went up, all of the reds and greens came in. And then from an outcomes perspective, we saw improvements across motivation, intent to stay, teamwork, and pride in ARN. So again, we were able to go, what we were targeting was actually making a difference. So we kept doing the same thing. It's not broken, don't fix it, keep it simple and just keep doing the same thing, focusing in on those key leaders and everybody. 18 months later, we did another survey, and again, great participation rate. This time it was 92%. Continued improvement, causal factors going up again, so use of rewards this time as well, respect for members, communication and leadership, all above the historical average, which is what we were aiming for. Actual culture, again, we made more improvement, and one of the things that we're most excited about is the fact that now our primary style is a constructive style, so humanistic encouraging is now our primary style. So we're seeing those shifts and we're seeing those moves. And then finally, outcomes. So again, more continued improvement, particularly in terms of getting most of the style, or most of the outcomes above that historical average line, which again is what we're aiming for, and one of the biggest improvements was around cross-functional teamwork. So over the last 3 and a bit years, we've worked really hard, really proud of the work that we've done and really proud of the shifts that we've made in terms of our culture. We've set ourselves some more goals, and again, we're continuing to focus on the same things. We're going to keep working on building capability in leaders, getting them confident in leading in a constructive way, really pushing on achievement and really trying to lift that achievement focus in our business. But we're really confident that we can continue to make progress against this and headed in the direction that we're looking for. So I'm going to wrap up and share some reflections. So, this was a really great opportunity to leverage all of the tools and see how they all work together. And I think, what some of the things, or I guess my tips for people who are going to do something similar to this, really thinking about where people are at. So knowing where someone's at before you start, that means you can meet them where they are, which means you're able to really kind of think about how do you get them to feel confident and comfortable to make that change. People can't do what they don't understand, and I think that's a really key one. You can talk about constructive, you can talk about how you want people to show up, but if they don't get it, if they don't understand it, and if they don't feel that they can do it, then they're really going to struggle. Learning by doing trumps everything, we all know that, right? So, giving them the opportunity to practice it on the job in a safe way is one of the things I think made a really big difference. And taking every single opportunity we could to show them the culture in action. So communicating clearly, taking ownership of decisions, the good and the bad. Really calling out the right behaviours, focusing in on the things that were in line with what we were trying to achieve. But the most important thing for me, simplicity and consistency. Keeping it simple, making sure that you're consistent and giving people that ability to step up and do what you're asking of them. So that's a bit about our journey. I'm going to just hand over to Ciaran, who's going to wrap now by just sharing some of his reflections.
And I will just say that when Ange did my LSI for the first time, I was a bit red, probably. And the power of having someone of the skill of Ange beside me to confront me, to tell me, and for me to turn around and go, oh, I'm not sure I like this one. I have personally grown hugely amount because of what we have done, and that's a credit to Ange and the whole team and the whole business from where we are. It may not look like a lot to some of you who aren't used to what it looks like, but actually the difference internally is great. So wrapping it up, in terms of trust the process. You know, fantastic results by Ingham's, congratulations. Other businesses may be in other challenging times. We all know from an advertising perspective, it's really hard. But actually, if you trust the process, if you trust what we're trying to do here and empower leaders, make them make their own decisions, take their own accountability, take on things, it actually works. Get involved, don't leave it to HR. As an ELT, we all got involved in it. If there were training sessions going on, leadership seminars going on, we made sure that we had somebody from the leadership team on it to encourage it, to show that it was important to the business and to provide their learnings. Small things really matter. Very simple emails, well done, calling out good behavior, those sort of things actually really do create a ball of momentum. Continue to question the journey, you know, as times get tighter, as we have to look at cost cutting. Question, is this the right thing? But ultimately, as I said before, trust in the process, know where you're going is ultimately what you've got to keep in mind. And finally, I want to just talk about one brief person who I thought would never, ever, ever in their lives, in career, change and buy into this. Very red, and about 2-3 months ago, there was a business challenge around investment in another area of the business, and he came into me and he said, I know I'm red, but, and produced a full business case around why the action should be taken, the decisions made, the investment made, the return it would get. And at that stage, I knew that if we can change him, we can change the whole organization. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Thank you for your time. Thank you.